So I think today probably we can just have a quick meeting and probably we can just start it. And looks like just three of us. So I have turned the recording on. So you want to talk about Galley, because we know we have 2 weeks almost working on tests.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's killing productivity here. So I've restarted the effort. So essentially, first thing I'm doing is I'm just trying to come up with a decent testing framework so that we can start with a good set of tests from the get-go. That's why I started writing this containerized model for adding API server into the testing infrastructure. So hopefully this should be done by end of the day today. And then I'll switch back to doing the actual galley work, which will include essentially getting the existing prototype, looking it up into shape, adding tests, and start landing it. In the meantime, I'll do a little bit of refactoring. So the original prototype suffered some of the issues with the event listening stuff. So I'll fix those as well. All in all, I think it should be in good shape in the next 2 weeks, sometime within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so regarding the public internal format, I haven't done much writing it down, and I was working on the pilot clients, and it's 60% done. A few of the CRDs has been switched to use the new group. So what's...
are you planning to share the format? Do you have a set date for publishing the format, proposed format?
I can do it next week. So
I think next week Martin wants to share the...
Oh, you talks about design review and like...
Yeah, so I think it's gonna...
Yeah, then we can, I think what we can do is once I got the write-up, I will share and see people if they have comments, and we can talk about after next week.
Okay, so it's just going to be design, no prototyping.
So we can do either way. We can do either design or either on paper, or we can just having a big issue and writing one of the issue list. So if it's a small design, we can just write down as an issue.
Okay, I think the format of the that format is going to be big, so I don't think it's going to be small in that sense. So I think you want to start like by parts or something. I mean, you don't want to try to eat the whole word all at once, right? So I don't know. I mean, but you probably want to come up with a basic model, high-level model, and share it early on, rather than trying to do
So, but I think for whatever this is, it should come along with the architecture doc.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, it should be aligned with the architecture doc. All I am saying is like you can come up with something very basic, and then we can start immediately discussing about it, like
So what I understand is as clips.0. The public format in terms of pull message would be the same as the internal.
So I thought this was about prototyping the... Sorry, my bad. I thought this was about prototyping the V1 format.
No.
Okay, sorry. My bad.
It's alpha, right? It's clips.0. So I think it's basically having a different, that's what the thing we have in mind is the different API group.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the V1 format will be, I think we have V2. The V2 format will be different, will be big. And that's not, yeah. Yeah, that's what it come after the architecture. Okay. Yeah, so have this work, and we have immediate things to unblock in palettes. It's basically you allow palettes to accept the different kinds, same kinds of different API group. So that will be some storage model change, that will come in. I hope I can get in by next week. So in terms of prototyping OSConfig, we're having I think DIM is almost getting done with the pilot accepts the CRD. I think his PR is in review. The cluster namespace scope, I think we kind of table it. We kind of like think about decision is only have namespace scope and below. We may not having Istio to support cluster level or global level scope for any of the CRDs. Yeah, for the other work,
is that?
not much progress.
Okay. So why would we not have Istio? Joy, can you hear me?
API style, as I said, for mixers, and I think Christopher want to take over the mixer reorg work. Okay. The similar things I did for pilots, and I'm not sure how much he was working on taking the migrate all these protos, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just talked about it in the
protos to the package name, the proper package name.
Can you guys hear me?
So proto validator.
Hey, Joy.
Jason.
Yeah.
Actually,
for that with Sal for once we have a reliable way to have webhooks installed in the default package, then we can enable by default in Kubernetes 1.9 clusters. No, we can't hear you.
I'm talking through the phone line. Do you guys have it hooked up?
So is all the work you are doing tracked in that issue?
It's not tracked.
Do we have actually a mic speaker open?
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Oh.
Okay, can you hold on one second? I'm just gonna turn on.
Yeah, is somebody talking?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay. Yeah, Sven and I are both talking. I think Sven could go first.
Yeah. So I was trying to ask why you were saying that something about that we weren't going to support global level, mesh level configuration, and I was wondering why that would be.
So, I think there's an echo.
Yeah, so this is the only speaker we have right now.
So the out doesn't work, apparently. And seems like I won't be able to talk, and maybe.
So you guys need to turn off one of your microphones. Don't have two on.
Yes.
The mic is from one device, speakers on another, so if they're not.
So I disconnecting the out. So if you can just turn over.
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't you turn off your mic?
Turn off my mic.
Yes.
Okay, now I turn it off.
Okay, now speak closer to the speaker.
Oh, okay, awesome. So can you guys hear me? So I can hear you guys.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, awesome. So we have been having some discussion about how we write the format for the global names and for the global configs. And the namespace configs. We have, I think the last meeting, we have talked about different formats we can do. We can either using the different namespace and like a mixer does, or we can using the Kubernetes way, have cluster. We have basically different name of the proto message to represent different scope. That's two options we can have. Or the other round is in Istio, we just give up we're just giving external tool to author the global namespace or any kind of different namespace to author the global scope or any kind of hierarchical scoping system we can work with. And Istio config itself will be namespace scoped as the top scoping. and we can having service scope and below it, but a name scope is the top
Yeah,
scope.
it doesn't seem like that fits in very well with the model we're trying to achieve. Right? Like Kubernetes does not say, oh, sorry, if you want a cluster level scope, you have to use an external tool to do cluster level RBAC and have that like pipe through into every namespace, right? Like that's just not what they do. And us trying to do that, like we should be aligned with what they're doing and do things the same way so that it feels like a consistent experience and that there's not two different ways to do things. Or worse, that we say, oh no, sorry, we don't even do that. You have to, write some other thing to do that.
So how about I kind of write it up and we can having involve the right number of people, amount of parties, and we can talk about that. I think,
Okay.
yeah, we should open that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I will do that. So any other questions? Sorry, I wouldn't know my mic was, the speaker was muted, so cannot hear you guys.
Oh, I had an update for the mixer stuff. I just talked about that in the policies working group yesterday, and Martin added the doc that he had constructed for this to that issue. So I'll start working on that after reviewing his doc.
Okay. So let's go ahead.
Is someone talking, or are we just looking at something?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, so now it's good. It's still scheduled. I think it's a good time for us to revisit what we have done in March, and we're gonna looking forward for April. So we need to come up with a stage for each of these features in the configure group, and that's what we're shooting for. So we probably go one by one, and I think just for myself and for you guys, we should also review the criteria, what that means for alpha, beta, and the stable, because we all coming back from the test and fixing, and we probably lost the track of a lot of our features. So let's go one by one. So let's review this first. So alpha and beta, I think, has a distinction into the code is well tested, the feature is safe for production to use. The APIs should contain beta. That's kind of one distinct details we need to pay attention. And there's, I think there was another one. Is the end-to-end test should be covered. Yeah, so we need to have end-to-end tests to cover the basic features of the basic of the stack features. So that's, to me, is kind of distinct criteria distinguish alpha and beta stages. Keep this in mind, and let's go over the stuff. Basic config resource validation and JSON. My understanding is this is still not in beta stage, because you told me the code is in but not in installation. So does it has been tested, or?
It's unit tested. I would consider, I would consider beta, you should be able to install Istio, and if possible, we're doing the right thing with validation. Right now, if you have the latest Kubernetes cluster and you install Istio, we don't validate. You have to go through some clunky steps to get things set up, because our installation process isn't robust.
Does those validations requires webhooks?
On server side, yeah.
Yes, and you talked about you're working on a better webhooks installation.
Yeah.
So that's until that work is done, we won't be able to install this, set up this in an easy way.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so we're still looking to, by the end of April, you think it'd be still in alpha?
I sure hope we have something sooner than that, because the proxy injection is also dealing with the same problems. It works, but you have to run some shell scripts, and it's not fully automated.
Istio Cuddle, my take on this is Istio Cuddle doesn't have much test. I think it was tested in one of the end-to-end scenarios, but itself, it's kind of lacking a lot of unit tests, and that I would like to have.
Yeah, I was planning to work on that last week, and ended up working on different end-to-end tests. So that's.
So my another worry about bringing into beta just in next month is we are working on Christopher gonna starting working on the Mixer clients. Kubernetes Mixer Kubernetes CRD clients, and that will actually incur quite a big change on the kubectls because now kubectl doesn't use any of the Mixer CRD clients, and it's kind of hard coded and assume every config in the same API version for Mixer configs. So if we want to change that, that will be non-trivial.
I think that doesn't, making that change will require updating all of our tests to use different groups and versions as well. Assuming Istio control is passing that through, then it should be covered. Probably ought to update our end-to-end test to use Istio control in more cases. We're using kubectl for a lot of the resource creation now. So if we did swap in Istio control, we can get more coverage end-to-end.
Yeah, but itself, so another thing is I don't expect that the changes in Istio Cuddle will be done until maybe middle April, because there will be non-trivial add-ons to Istio Cuddle to using Mixer native clients instead of having a dynamic clients kind of capture them all. So I think shooting for beta is a little bit risky, or you think we should shooting for that?
It's dependent on when those other changes come.
Okay.
Next week, it's much less risky. If the dependent changes are completed at the end of April, then we have to.
So, Christopher, so you think how long it takes for you to get the Mixer change done?
It's a good question. I've not actually started implementing anything, so I think it's too early to try to determine the scope.
Okay, so let me just put in alpha because that's dependent to what you're working on. If that sounds right to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if yourself or Martin have any better assessments of the scope or of the effort, feel free to put it in there.
Mesh-wide settings. So this is hard to evaluate because I know it has been in for a long time on those mesh configs, and they are not versioned. So the API versioning criteria doesn't apply. In terms of tests, Jason, do you know any tests around those config map?
Oh, are you talking about the mesh-wide things or the mixer things?
I think she just.
I moved on to the next one.
Oh, okay.
So,
not indirectly. Yeah, I don't think there's unit. There's tests of defaulting, handling defaults in the config in the mesh config. It's tested end to end quite a bit, but we don't test all permutations. So if you put an invalid setting in mesh configuration, it might not just, we're not going to catch it.
But I think that the criteria for beta is not to test all scenarios. But if we having end-to-end test covers the critical scenarios, I think that should be enough. So to me, it sounds like it's almost beta, and or if just adding a few more tests, that will be beta.
I think the thing we might want to consider there for benchmark settings is is it just the current code that we have, or do we want to make that more dynamic? Use the CRD, yeah, because we talked about that a lot and scoped out. So I guess that's really the thing to do, and then decide if it's what state that's in.
So how big a hill it is to climb to make it stable with the current code? If it is maybe just a couple of days of adding tests and like making and that's it, I think it's worth the effort, and then we can say it's stable, and then the next step is doing the refactoring.
I would generally consider it stable since we've been using the same code for the last year.
Okay.
It's a config map, which is one step above reading stuff from a file. The one known issue is recognizing unknown fields, which is specific to the JSON DB handling. We kind of.
What do you mean recognize?
If you add a new field to your config map, but Pilot doesn't recognize it, instead of producing a warning, we error out. That problem shows up in other places as well, because we're not.
But I thought there was
ignoring unknown fields.
There was a way to parse these things in a more relaxed manner, right?
Yes. Yeah, I had a simple PR for that, and it got held up because there's concerns that we were going to drop by warning and not completely airing out. We would create undefined behavior in the system, and then we ought to catch that earlier in validation.
So what's the outcome of error? Steady state, or we just drop everything?
And for Pilot, we wouldn't start likely, or we're gonna either we wouldn't start, or we would just use the defaults and not what the user provided, which is not great.
Okay, so what we are missing really is the validation, something like this,
Right, but with the config map,
there's nothing.
You could write it, but then it's all you're revising the entire install. Likely bootstrapping problems.
Okay. I think, given the stage we're in, the best you can do is say, be careful to the customers, and just commit to one behavior, right?
Well, mesh-wide settings here is the control plane settings, right? And not mesh-scoped config.
Yeah, this is a different concept. So this is really not like makes a scope. It's so I would say it's more like a runtime settings. A lot of unraised flags in there. So actually, one of the config in the mesh config is actually being working on to move into CRD is the authentication policy. So DIM is basically now all the MTLS flag is defined in the mesh setting, and he's moving that into CRD. So you can have in per service MTLS on and off, or and there's something additional. So he is active working on that, but he is looking for prototyping by the end of next month.
So, okay, hold on. The thing that I'm trying to get to is can we actually bring the current code to a stable place? So I think we all agree that this needs to change, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, what additional things that we need to do for the current source base before move on to the next thing? And so can we say whatever there is, it's enough or not, right? So, and based on this discussion, I think we have a little bit of work left, which is being able to define the behavior and, telling people to say, be careful about this, right? This is the behavior, there's a gotcha here, right? Because we cannot fundamentally fix this problem without investing a lot more, and we'd rather invest this in the CRDs, right? Is that a fair statement?
But there's implications that if we move into beta or stable, we need to have some backward compatibility guarantee. And so that's for MTOS. We actually really want to remove that flag out of the config map once the authentication policy CRD is in. So we want to having there's only one place to define the MTOS in the CRDs, and that the CRD we talked about namespace scope or global scope. So we don't want another kind of flag still sits in the mesh config map that will literally globally turn on MTLS and all for all the mesh services.
Okay, so I think then your point is we should not mark this as beta or as stable. I'm sorry. We should just stay in beta and until we switch over to CRDs. Would that be a fair way to say this?
That's for stable, yes. For beta, I want to double check the compatibility requirement. I think we need to have some.
So, okay, regardless, I think there's still some little amount of work that's left here, right? So, regardless of how we mark this, we probably need to make sure that we define the behavior, the policy, how to handle with these like missing field or mistyped field, let's put it that way, and then maybe add a couple of tests, right? So that seems to be should be done, or goodness, regardless of how we mark it. Then it looks like we can either mark this beta and stable and before switching to CRDs, and that affects the backward compatibility. And I don't think there's a forcing function for us to mark this as stable at this point. So we should just mark this as beta. Do that upfront work, mark as beta, move over to CRD work.
So if we mark this as beta, given the fact that we just adding some tests, so once the CRD is in, that requires to also providing a upgrading pass, which means if people are already using this flag to turn on MTLS, so we need to have a tool to help them converting this into CRDs. And if I'm not sure if that's.
I don't think we can get away from it. So this will be we already are going to have the long-term support release very soon, right?
No, but if it's in alpha, we don't need to. So if it's alpha, then we're getting the CRDs in, and we can just remove that field, and then we can claim beta then.
Paper shuffling. Okay.
I'm just thinking, given the resource we have, we're giving the work who's needed to kind of supporting it for the long term, and the importance of that features and flags. I think it's way better.
Just to be clear, we are going to still define the behavior for the failure case for the current config maps, right, Jason? I mean, regardless of whether we call it stable, alpha, or beta.
The failure case we still need to. So loading there.
It's not that. The typical thing we told people is make sure you use the latest of everything, and then you don't hit that problem. It occurs more when you have your version skew, which we're not.
So
if you're using an old version of Istio control, you did with the newer version of Pilot or vice versa. Then you
do we have a warning for that? Do we need to
mismatch versions?
No.
Yeah. We're not enforcing any sort of. We version the client, so Istio control came with a particular release, but we're not. We have version endpoints or version information in the various components, but we're not aggregating all that information and saying, here's your entire control plane version. Here's a mismatch.
Yeah, I think that should be something that we should gain. Not, immediately, but I think should be captured somewhere. We should definitely have that working.
Okay, so
okay.
So also, if we think the flip side, what we lost, what we didn't get if we keep the config map to be alpha for a long time. Do we have any problem with that?
Okay, so forget about alpha, beta. To me, that's paper shuffling, right? So there are two important things, right? Define the behavior so that everybody is aware of it, or we put the big warning sign. And then two, whether we provide tooling for migration or not, right? So those are the two real, ground level things that has an impact, right? So if we don't provide a migration tool, we need to document, we need to have some sort of release notes or something that clearly specifies, look, this is changing, this is breaking, and things like that, which is easy to do, but just needs to be captured, right? Otherwise, we need to invest in the tool. given this discussion, I don't think we have any forcing function to push this into the next stability phase, right? So.
Right. So it's just this part of config is more focused on the mesh administrator, not the service owner. We conflated the two a bit because we have authentication policy at that level. But if we separate them, then this falls under the more of like under the install and upgrade flow, rather than the than all the other. Okay. And then there's other things to consider there. The whole upgrade process and how that works.
Yeah, probably letting the upgrading flow, the environment team to kind of drive moving this config into the next stage will be better for.
There's implications on install, for example. If you make a CRD and you're going to validate it, then you need to make sure that your validator's installed before the thing that your CRD is. And right now we're not. Right now we just apply everything at the same time and hope eventually, it eventually gets created. It doesn't work when you have interdependencies between your components. So bootstrapping.
Okay.
All right.
So let's leave for alpha, and I think in terms of communication, I think having it alpha stays and basically it's a big information for the users. So you just if we put anything in the mesh where the config, and just be aware that it can break anytime, and we don't provide much guarantees. But I think as we just discussed, it's fine for now, and there's no driving force to push us to the next stage. So we're gonna keep that.
Okay.
So the meeting is also I think it's 30 minutes, so it's official running out of time. So for the rest of the work, because we are kind of a little behind on some of the galley dev, and we were rolling to offline for we're looking for the next stage. Because we already done the trackers, I think we pretty know where we are and what we can looking for. For next week, Martin just is working on the config architecture doc. He has been through some modifications since the first versions. So we're gonna have a 1-hour design meeting next week, the same time. But we were having the full hour for the next meeting to discuss to do a design review of the config architecture. Thanks for attending. Bye. Oh, any questions before we end it? Okay, no more questions. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Sorry about the audio problem.